the last classes, we saw that we can compare numbers. So we can use the relational operators to check if two variables or a variable and a number, literal is greater than, less than, equal, not equal. We also saw that we can compare characters to see if characters are equal or, a character comes before another character. Now that was how we did it for primitive data types. So with the primitive data types, we use the greater than and less than and equal and not equal. With strings, because strings are objects, remember we said a string is a class. So all these strings are actually objects. They're not primitive data types. The string starts with an S. That's uppercase. The string has methods on it, like to uppercase, to lowercase, char, at, length. So when you want to compare two strings together, what you should do is you should use methods that are defined on the string class. So there are four methods that we are going to talk about today. One is called equals, ignore case, compare to, and compare to ignore case. Equals and equals equals ignore case, those first two. Basically what they do, you call them on a string object, and then you give them another string. And what it does, it checks if that string is the same as the other string that you gave it. So here, let's actually, instead of looking at this code, let's kind of write it together to see what it's doing. So let's say I have a string, S1 equal to apple, okay? And I have S2 equal to banana, and I have S3 equal to apple again. Add S4 equal to lowercase apple. Now, if I want to check if S1 is the same as any of these strings, I could say if S1, and then I put dot, and I'm going to call the equals method, okay? And the equals method, there's the Java docs for it. It says indicates whether some other object is equal to this one. So it's going to check if the other object or the other string is equal to this one. So I'm going to say equals S2. And here, if it is, I'm going to say system.out.println, yay, found equal strings. Now, if I call it on S2, if I compare S1 and S2, I'm going to find that they're not equal. So nothing gets printed out. So here I'll say else system.out.println not equal. With S1 and S2, because they contain different strings, they are not equal. Apple and banana are not equal. But if I go to S1 and compare it to S3, if it's equal, it says that they are equal. Okay, so it says I found that they're equal. If I try comparing it to S4, it's going to say they're not equal because uppercase A and lowercase a are not the same. They don't have the same Unicode. Okay, so only 3 will say that they are equal. Let's copy this code down and use. I just want to keep this so that the file, when I put it on Blackboard for you, you have the original code. So here when I say S4, so this one here, when I try to compare it to S4, I will see that they are not equal. So here, this is what's getting printed. This gets printed. Now, what if I want to ignore the lowercase a and I want to just compare them and see if they're equal? What we can do in that case is use the other method, equals ignore case. So I can come here and say S1, and I'm just going to erase this so that it shows up for me in NetBeans. I don't have to type it. And I say equals, and this is the one I want, equals ignore case. So I want to compare S1 to S4. I want to compare S1, uppercase apple, to S4, lowercase apple, ignoring the case. And when I do that, it will say that they are equal. Because when I ignore the case, they are equal because I ignored the case. So this is how you can check if two strings are equal to each other by using the method equals and equals ignore case. So this is kind of like the equal, equal, and not equal. Now, what if I want to check if a string comes before a string? In that case, we're going to use the compare to and compare to ignore case methods. Now, I didn't write the compare to and the compare to ignore case how it behaves, but what I want to do is I want to show you on Google how you can find the Java docs. They are in NetBeans showing, but I want to show them to you here. So I'm going to say string Java. And this is the documentation for Java 7. Let's see if we can find Java 8. There's Java 9. Let's go to Java 9. And I want to check the compare to method. So I'm going to search for compare to. And let's go down. There's the compare to method, and there's the compare to ignore case. I'm going to click on it, and it gives me a huge explanation of how it should work. And let's just make it a little bigger so we can read it together, because I want to teach you how to start reading this documentation. Okay. So let's go back up and let's go back down. Okay. So let's read what it's saying. So the first thing we notice is that the compare to takes another string and it's returning an int. Equals, when I look at here, the equal sign, what is it returning? Do you think it's returning an int? If I'm able to use the equals, whatever equals is returning inside of an if statement, that means it's returning what? It's returning a Boolean. So if I say s1 dot equals, notice here it's taking an object, the string, and it's returning a Boolean. So the equals and equals ignore case return Booleans. It returns yes or no. Yes, they're equal. No, they're not equal. Now, the compare to and compare to ignore case don't return Booleans. They return numbers. Well, what are they going to return? Let's see what it does. What it says. It says compares two strings lexicographically. Lexicographically means alphabetically, basically. The comparison is based on the Unicode value of each character. So that's alphabetically. The character sequence represented by this string object, when it says this string object, it's talking about the string that we are putting before the compare to. When I say s1 dot compare to, s1 is this string object. Okay, and it says the character sequence represented by this string object, so the one we're calling the method on, that's going to come before the dot, is compared lexicographically to the character sequence represented by the argument string. The one we pass in parentheses, the one that's in parentheses, that is called the argument string. It's the one that you are passing in to the compare to method, so to do the comparison on. Okay, so here, if I were to come and say if s1 dot compare to s2, I'm going to compare s1 to s2 to see which one is bigger or smaller. So we would say s1 this. When they say the word this, it's referring to this string s1. And when they talk about s2, they are going to say the argument string, because it is the one that is in parentheses. So the one in parentheses is called the argument. The one you are calling the method on, you're putting before the dot, this is called the this string. Now, let's see what it's going to say. It says the result is a negative integer if this string precedes, means comes before or smaller, the argument string. So if I go to S1, I ask S1, so here, if S1 precedes means it's less than S2, it's going to come before it in the dictionary, then compare to returns a negative number. Okay, it's not going to return -1, it's just a negative number. So if you ask S1, compare yourself to S2, S1 is going to look and say, oh, I'm smaller than S2. Then it's going to return a negative number to indicate that it is smaller. Okay, now how about if S1 If you ask S1 to compare itself to S2 and it says, oh, I'm bigger, then compare to returns a positive number. So this positive and negative number is basically coming from the perception of this first string before the dot when you're asking it. If S1 sees itself smaller than S2, it's going to return a negative number to indicate that it's smaller. If S1 sees that it's bigger, it's going to return a positive number to indicate that it's bigger. How about if they're the same string? If S1 is the same as S2, then compare to returns a 0. Okay, so a 0 means that they are equal. Okay. So here I'm going to go to S1 and I'm going to say compare yourself to S2. And if the answer is 0, I'm going to say that they're equal. If S1 dot compare to S2 is less than 0, I'm going to say that it's smaller. I'm going to say S1 smaller than S2. Should be an else if. And then the last option, if it's greater than 0. So I'm just going to say that it's bigger. So S1 is bigger, meaning comes after S2. So let's test it out with different strings and see what it prints. So here, if I go to S1, which is Apple, and ask it, Apple, compare yourself to S2. Well, Apple, uppercase A comes before uppercase B, so it should say I'm smaller. So it should return a negative number. So we should get this print, the smaller one. So let's see if that happens. And we get Apple is smaller than banana. Now let's switch it around. Let's ask S2 to compare itself to S1. Let's switch them all. S2 asking S1. So now if I go to S2 and I say compare yourself to S1, I'm going to go to banana and say, banana, compare yourself to apple. Banana is going to say, I am bigger. So it's going to return a positive number. So it's not going to match the equal. It's not going to be less than 0. It's going to be greater than 0. So it's going to go to this statement and print the bigger than. So I get banana is bigger. Okay. Now, if I was to compare, for example, Apple S1 and S4, so let's go and compare S4 to S1. Okay. So Apple, lowercase apple, we ask it, compare yourself to S1. So Apple is going to say, I am bigger because I have a lowercase a, and lowercase a comes after uppercase A. This one is 65, I am 97. So lowercase apple is going to say I'm bigger. S4 is going to say I'm bigger. So it's going to return a positive number indicating that it's bigger. So we're going to get the is a bigger. And that is what we got. But if I wanted to see that if they are equal, what I should do is use the compare to ignore case, just like we did with the equals method. So if I change all these to ignore case, then I will just get that they are equal. So let's try that. And we do get that they are equal. So if you want to compare strings, you need to make sure that you use the equals method to compare equality, or equals to ignore equals ignore case. Or if you want to do like less than or greater than, then you should use the compare to and compare to ignore case.